You started writing this when you were in college. You were 19 when you were writing this. And what did you envision when you were writing this?
Yeah, I was not much older than the king of wishful thinking.
Exactly.
That you saw. But I honestly, I knew I wanted a life in musicals. I directed West Side Story my senior year of high school, and I knew that was kind of it for Puerto Rican guys in musical theater. That's all that existed. Yeah. I love that show, but it was a long time ago.
Wow.
And I just kind of was writing what was missing, and I wanted to, I wanted to write musicals starring Latinos, telling different stories, and and here we are 20 years later, right? And now I'm on the Tonight Show talking to you. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I've been on it.
Okay, so look, I know that I said that I was working on a Snyder Cut video, but alas, that has fallen yet again by the wayside, so I can do something I actually enjoy. I just need a tiny bit more time on that one, so don't you worry, that's maybe coming up next. But for a moment, let's talk about something a little more fun. Following a culturally dominating production of the historical musical Hamilton, Lin Manuel Miranda has turned to the medium of cinema to continue his dominance for yet another decade. Luckily for us, Miranda deserves all of the praise he's garnered, being perhaps one of the most unique and consistent songwriters over the past decade, even if some of his leitmotifs are now a little bit beyond the point of surprising. Unlike the recent streaming debut of Hamilton, though, which offered audiences a direct recording of an unchanged Broadway performance, Miranda's new collaboration with director John Chu takes the music of a show that he worked on in the beginning of his era, In the Heights, and brings it to the medium of film, offering a more dynamic experience than anything that could be presented on Broadway. The colors are vibrant, performances are stellar, and the visual direction is intricate and explorative. Against all odds, Chu has preserved the nature of Broadway in the medium of cinema, something that should genuinely put fear in the hearts of performance elitists. Perhaps the most interesting thing about the film is the way that it preserves not only the music of Broadway, but the heart of it as well. It wouldn't be a Miranda performance, or every theater production since Rent, without an omnipresent ensemble, which is something often neglected in translations between the stage and the camera. Other films attempt to do so diegetically, but In the Heights recognizes that the ensemble's goal is to be metaphorical. They're the emotion of the song, they're the carrying vocal force, so they should be done in a very magical and unrealistic way. From the blocking of the performances to a cliché moment at the end where the cast rounds out the thesis without subtlety, In the Heights is not afraid to borrow even the most foundational aspects of theater as it moves to the screen. In fact, as someone who often finds themselves bored by stage productions, I was really enthralled by the ways Chu used cinema to better capture emotions often lost by the limitations of live performance. Theater elitists often say that the heart and soul of theater is unreplicatable on the camera, but In the Heights rarely undermines the structure of theater with its cinematic additions. Rather, the film only gets better by removing the boundaries of a stage. Scenes can now span city blocks, lighting can shift dynamically to better fit a part of a song, and physical reality can be broken, offering something much more emotionally resonating than things limited by physical space. Shots can cut across settings, and an indulgent use of creative editing across the film really emphasizes the cinema at play. I haven't seen John Chu's other films, but it seems that he's really interested in getting into the more dynamic aspects of cinema. One aspect I wanted to mention was in the concept of the show, which, for a film that's basically a guaranteed financial success, is a breath of fresh air in a medium that seems hell-bent on creating the most miserable films possible. Centering on dreams of lower-income families living in New York's Washington Heights, the film aims not to tell a story of heartbreak, but one of unsure optimism. Facing the difficulties that come from racial and financial disenfranchisement and the ways that it can adjust one's outlook on life. The film engages with heavy ideas, but it never fetishizes trauma in the way that other popular films have. Latino members in society have unique stories that deserve to be told, but the disenfranchised are too often made to be showcases for trauma in popular media. In the Heights uses financial trouble and racism as a through line for the plot, but the conflict and themes are far more human than most films would lend people in these situations. Life in the Heights is difficult, but it's still life, one that need not be conflated with pure misery. It's for this reason, though, that the film's minor errors, which in most films would be nitpicks more than anything, rise to the top and create a rather sizable issue. One subplot of the film involves Nina, who, after feeling like she'd lost connection to her heritage and neighborhood culture after leaving New York for Stanford, decides she may want to drop out of school and live at home. Through her, we get a look at the disconnect many feel when leaving a cultural space and entering one that chooses to gentrify individuality. as well as a familial conflict that really hammers in the fear of disappointment many hold with regards to their parents. At one point, her father is investigating one of her lies, that being that the spring tuition deadline had passed, and he makes a call to the college to address the issue. This conflict is perhaps the most interesting in the film, addressing real problems in a wonderful and intricate manner. However, when calling the school, this happens.
Hi, Mr. Rosario?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Now, a Hamilton reference isn't the worst thing, but I feel that it lacks the power of the film's subtlety. During this moment, the audience is momentarily pulled away from the plot and is now refocused on an entirely different experience, something that I clearly noticed by their audible reaction. Similar things can be said during all of Miranda's cameos, which, though really funny, suffer as a result of the star power. References can be a wonderful way to subtly talk to an audience about shared knowledge, but there's an art to doing so without interrupting the movie. Again, some might think this is a nitpick, but I personally found it distracting enough that I had to readjust back to the film before continuing. That said, In the Heights is a generally wonderful film, and one that shouldn't be missed. The endearing narrative and gorgeous visuals deliver one of the best films of the year so far, bringing gripping emotion and an important message to families ready to graduate from the simplicity of Hamilton. The film is a bit too long, and I question the decision to preserve a few unnecessary tracks, but for the most part, I was thoroughly impressed by Chu's interpretation of the show, and I'm optimistic for a future dominated by the music of Lin Manuel Miranda. 8 out of 10.